What's shaking, my friends? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Shane. Today we're going to talk about all the books that I read in the month of May. So as far as my wheel goes, as you know, I spun in the month of May to see what I would be reading off my wheel, and I didn't successfully complete everything off that list. I did not read ACOWAR. Are we shocked? No. And I also did not read Symphony of Stars because it's a long book and I don't have the audiobook because there is no audiobook. And so that kind of went off the back burner. And I was also giving myself a little bit of a break in the month of May because I know in June I'm going to be reading a ton of books. So I didn't put myself a lot of pressure to read in May. But I did read a lot of things. So I attempted to read 10 things. I DNF'd 2 and I read fully 8. So it came out to a total of 4,554 pages. So I am going to do my wrap up like always, where I'm going to start from my DNFs or the lowest rated and then move up to the highest rated. So here we go. The first DNF that I had for the month was As Good as Dead by Holly Jackson. This is the third in the Good Girls Guide to Murder series, and number one, right away as I started reading it, I realized that I could not remember everything that happened in the first two, and I think it's very important for you to remember because you have to know who the characters are and what their importance is. And so I knew right away that I wasn't going to fully enjoy the book because I didn't remember the characters, and I had no desire to go back and read those two books in order to get to this book. I tried to read a summary, but it just still, like, the characters just were not sticking in my mind. And then without spoiling this, there were some things in there that I wasn't liking. I feel like our main character kind of changed in this book, and then I read some reviews when I was pondering DNFing it, and then I went ahead and spoiled myself for what happened in the rest of the book, and I know for a certain fact I would not have liked it, so I'm happy that I DNF'd the book. My next DNF was The House of the Scorpion by Nancy Farmer. I absolutely positively, there's an audience for this book. It is just not me. So I think that I'm going to get out of reading younger novels. Not that this is a younger novel, but it does start by telling our story as our main character is very young and going from there. So like half the book, I can't remember what percent I DNF, but I was at over 100 pages in. But for like half the book, we're not even into the teen years yet. And so that's kind of what threw me off. But basically, this is a great commentary on clones and that kind of thing. And this is living in a world where clones exist. And our main character is a clone. He doesn't know that at first. And he doesn't know what being a clone means. And he is not treated how other human beings are treated. So I can't talk too much more about that because it will be a spoiler. But I did DNF this, and I did go ahead and spoil myself for what happened at the rest of the story, and I think it would be a great story for someone. It just was not for me. Coming in at number 8, this is a book that I actually finished, and that is going to be Magic by Angie Sage. And this actually kind of may have contributed to the DNF of House of the Scorpion because I tried to read House of Scorpion right after I read this one. Sorry, it's very, very shiny. And the reason is, like, this is a middle grade. And I can absolutely see why a middle grade would love this, but I feel like it read more like a classic middle grade. Like, I had vibes of, like, older middle grades, like not modern new middle grades, if that makes any kind of sense. But this follows, basically what happens is our father, Mr. Heap, he is going out to get some herbs for his wife who is in labor, and on his way back to their house, he realizes that there is a baby that has been abandoned in the bushes. And so he, of course, takes her and he sneaks her in to their house. And when he gets back to their house, he realizes that his baby boy that was just born is being whisked away, and they are being told that he has died. And so he takes this newborn baby girl that he has found in the woods, and he's going to pass it off as their newborn child. But who is she? And what who abandoned her in the woods. And that starts our story, because this is in a land of magic, and the Heaps have magic. They are wizards, and they are actually, wizards are kind of looked down on in this world. And Jenna, who is what they named the girl that they found in the woods, obviously has no magic. So they're trying to figure out who she actually is, where she came from, and that's the story of this. And this is start of a longer series. I think there are 6 or 7 books in the series, but I will not be continuing on. Like I said, I thought it had some really classic vibes going on, and that just does not suit well for me, because as we know, I don't read many classics, but I do think it is a good start for a middle grader. Coming in at number 7 is going to be a disappointment for me, and that is going to be Dance of Thieves by Mary Pearson. I really enjoyed the Remnant Chronicles by this same author, but this one kind of just didn't meet my expectations. It is in the same world as the Remnant Chronicles, but different characters. So we are following the perspective of Jace Ballinger, and his dad, who has ruled this kingdom, has just died, and it has been taken over by him. He is the next heir, and so you have him, and he's fighting for his own kind of rogue kingdom role. And then you have another perspective, who she is a representative for the queen, and she is coming to investigate some disturbances, like unrightful trade in Jace's lands, and some things come about. They get kidnapped, and there's a whole thing. And so this is definitely a love story. I feel like this was even more of a love story than the other one. I don't think this one had like a super good plot in it. I feel like the other one at least had like a plot, but this one didn't have a great plot. I think the world building was not very well, even though it takes place in the same world. I feel like they could have fleshed out Jace's world and kingdom a little bit better, and how they rule and how they do things, and I think it didn't just hold my attention as much as I wished it to. I do think I will continue on with this because I was intrigued by the way it ended, but overall this was a 3 stars. Another book coming in at number 6 was kind of a disappointment, and I just finished this one. This was a new addition to my TBR that I did not draw on my wheel, and that's going to be The Prison Healer by Lynette Nani. I'm not sure if that's how you say her name, so sorry, correct me if I'm wrong, but I popped this on my TBR because I've been meaning to read it for quite some time, and it has been on my TBR for several months if you've been involved anywhere in my channel. And this follows our main girl, Kiva, who is a prisoner. She is considered a rebel, and we don't know at the start of the story why she has been imprisoned, but she just is in prison, and she is the healer of this prison. And then one day this queen comes in, and she gets a message from her long-lost family saying, please keep the queen alive, we're coming. And so she has been tasked to keep her alive, and to keep her alive, she must take part in the trial of ordeals, because they are going to make the rebel queen take part in it, but she is not strong enough to do so. So Kiva takes her place in the trials. And so if Kiva passes the trials, her and the rebel queen will both survive. If she fails the trials, they will both die. So it's intriguing. I absolutely positively did like the premise of the story, and I will continue on. However, I did have some qualms. I did not think that this was a great story for world building. Of course, this is young adult, so this is not super high fantasy. This is more of a love story than a fantasy, in my personal opinion. And the reason that disappointed me is because I just did not root for this love story, okay? There were some twists and turns there at the end, which I enjoyed and I will continue on with. But overall, I gave it 3 stars. I think it has a lot of room for improvement. I think we need some more world building and maybe step back from the romance just a tad. I just didn't like our main love interest, Jaren, and overall, I gave it 3 stars. It was fine, but of course, I thought it was very predictable. If you've read a lot of fantasy, this is nothing new. Coming in at number 5 is going to be Small Favor by Jim Butcher, Mr. Harry Dresden. I actually very much enjoyed this installment in the series. If you don't know, this just follows our wizard Harry Dresden as he fights crime in Chicago. And I really enjoyed this one. I thought it was very action-packed. I didn't think that he had a terrible female gaze in this one. I really enjoyed him as a character, and I really enjoyed the overall plot and I am really excited to continue on with the Dresden Files. And coming in at number 4 is a shocker, and that's going to be From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout, which I gave 4 stars to. And I thought that I would really laugh this out of the park, like I wouldn't really enjoy it, but I actually really did enjoy it, and I read it in under 24 hours. Who am I? So this follows Poppy, who basically we live in a world where we don't really know what's going on. She is a maiden, and maidens are not allowed to do much. They're not allowed for pleasure. They can't do hardly anything. And she doesn't know what this is, except she will be a maiden until she ascends. And that she doesn't know what the ascension is. And I've heard criticisms about this from people that, like, they don't like the world building and that we don't know what an ascension is, and we've never been told what an ascension is in this book. But we are following right there along with Poppy, and she also does not know what the ascension is. She just knows that she's supposed to be preparing for it, and she does not know what this is. So basically, and then some people are trying to kill her, and it goes from there. And there is a sweeping love interest in the story, of course, and I really just enjoyed this. I love the twists and turns in it. I love that it kept me super entertained throughout. Even though it didn't have the best world building, I was entertained. I haven't heard that many good things about the sequels, but I do plan on continuing on, and this was a shocker for me because I did really enjoy it. Coming in at number 3 is just one of the chunkers that I read this month, also that I gave 4 stars to, and that's going to be The Heart's Invisible Furies by John Boyne. So this was part of my April TBR wheel that I did not get done. I think I had read 100 pages by the end of April, and I carried it over into the month of May. I ended up really enjoying it. This follows our main character Cyril, and from the time that he was a boy to the time that he is a very old man, and basically his life experiences of he was adopted and being a gay man when you are not supposed to be gay. So we travel all the way up where he has to be like in the closet, and where it's you can get murdered for being gay, jailed, all that kind of stuff, to all the way in the future, and we kind of grow with him and meet everyone he meets. And I really love the characters, and I really love his story. It's certainly heartbreaking, a lot of heartbreak in here, but the only reason I gave this 4 stars instead of 5 stars is because of some of the writing choices that John Boyne chose. So this whole novel leads up to several key moments in the story, and like I want to see those moments on page, and these moments a lot of times were not on page. It just kind of like, ooh, here it is, and then fade to black, and then maybe later I'll tell you the scene of what happened. And I just felt like that was a very crazy choice. So it's one that I really didn't enjoy. I wanted to know what happened throughout this whole book. We're waiting on these few pivotal scenes, and we just he just chose that writing choice not to put them on page, which I thought was strange. But overall, I enjoyed it. It was everything I wanted to, and I will be reading more John Boyne in the future. Coming in at number 2 was also a very shock for me, because when I spun this on the wheel, I thought there's no way that I'm going to like this book. But I ended up giving it 5 stars, and that's going to be Firefly Lane by Kristin Hannah. And I now consider this one of my favorite books of the year, if not of all time. I truly love this. This is not generally in my regular genres that I read, but that just goes to show you that you can really appreciate other genres regardless. So this follows our 2 main characters, Tully and Kate, and they have become friends against all odds. And basically it's just their story of life, and there's so many life lessons in here of, you know, just because you make it big doesn't mean you're not jealous of the small life, and just because you have a small life doesn't mean you're not jealous of somebody who can make it big. And now, my favorite book of the month, and possibly this has become one of my favorite books of all time. No doubt in my mind. You know, when I spun the wheel and I got this book, I was terrified, because when I go to read big chunkers, and the chunkers sit on my shelf for so long, like, I absolutely adore this. And that's going to be The Ember Blade by Chris Wooding. This is 824 pages, but I promise you this is one of the best fantasy books I have ever read in my entire life, and I will everybody to go out and pick this up, and I'm thankful that I did, because the sequel to this I think is coming out in November of this year, so I will be ready and I cannot wait. So this book follows in a world where basically Crodens, who is a kingdom, has taken over the Ossians, which is also a kingdom. They have conquered the Ossians. The Ossians are not slaves. They are able to work and do just as they were before, except there's harsher punishments, and they can be executed for treason if they are found to speak terribly of the Crodens, do anything of that nature, and so their whole world has been occupied. And so this follows our two main characters, Cade and Aaron. Cade is just a carpenter's son, and Aaron is kind of a little bit higher up on the totem pole. His dad is higher up, well regarded. They're both Ossians, but Aaron's dad is kind of in with the Crodens, and so they became best friends against all odds at the age of 8. And then one day, Aaron's dad, who is in with the Crodens, Aaron thinks that everything is okay. Aaron's dad gets executed for treason. And so this baffles Aaron, because he, as far as he knew, they were in good with the Crodens, and he could not fathom his father doing anything treasonous. So he thinks that it's something that he may have done, and his father got executed for something he did. And either way, Aaron, because he is a treasoner's son, he is going to be sent to prison. And of course, Cade tries to stand up for him because that's his best friend, and then Cade also gets sent to prison. So you have these two boys. They go to a prison work camp where basically you work until you die, and the conditions are very, very harsh in this prison. And so it's going to be their story of how do they escape this prison. And then there's these other characters that come into the story, and y'all, these characters are great. You do get a found family. You do have to work for it, but by the end of the story, there is this great found family, and you get all of these characters' perspectives, and they are just awesome. And of course, The Ember Blade is the title of this book. And so the Ember Blade is something that is said to, if whoever holds this blade will be the rulers of the Ossians. So, of course, the Crodens have the Ember Blade, and so as an Ossian in that story, they must get the Ember Blade in order to secure Ossia again. Of course, so you know there's going to be kind of a heist story, and it is so fantastic. It will also break your heart. It also has twists and turns, but I loved it. I love these characters. I loved this story. Highly, highly recommend this for anybody who loves fantasy. It kind of has like a classic feel to it, but with a modern take on things. And I loved it. And this is a book that I will be highly recommending forever and ever. Like I said, this has now become one of my favorite books of all time. Why do I let these books sit on my shelves? Seriously. So if you like adult fantasy, highly recommend this. The sequel comes out in November. I have heard criticism on this book. Here's the thing. I've heard people say there's not a lot at stake. Like, I don't understand why the Ossians are gonna go against the Crodens in that much of a manner, or why there's a rebel force fighting the Crodens, because it's not like they're slaves, and it's not like they're super oppressed. Okay, well, they are not super oppressed, they are not slaves, but they are also not free. So if somebody came today and took over the United States, and they made their own rules, and now we have to follow their rules, but they're so different from the rules that we used to have and the freedoms we used to have. Yeah, we may not be treated like slaves, but we are not free. And so I think regardless of the fact that Ossians are not slaves, there's still going to be uprising, there's still going to be rebels, because you overtook us and we did not want to be overtaken. So I loved this. And I think you would too. So highly recommend. Please read this. Yes, yes, yes. And it's heartbreaking, you know, all of these things as we're journeying through life. And I really enjoyed it. I gave it 5 stars, and there is a sequel to this that I do want to read, even though I haven't heard great things about it. I think it's called Fly Away, but I will be reading it. And I also do want to watch the series on Netflix, even though I've heard it's very, very much different from Firefly Lane. However, because I like this book so much, look, it's a beat up copy, I do hope to get a brand new copy of this for my shelves. That is all of the books that I read in the month of May. If you watched my June TBR video, you will know that I am participating in a teen book challenge in the month of June. And so I don't know what I'm going to be reading or when I'm going to be reading it. So I'm going to be vlogging my experience in the month of June. I am hoping to read more genres. I have noticed that I have fallen in love with some new genres this month. I read literary fiction, which I loved. I would love to read some horror. I would love to read just some different genres to get my kind of feelers out there for them. So if you know of any short novellas, short stories, 250 pages or less that you think that I might enjoy, please drop them below in the comments. I cannot wait for the month of June, and I hope y'all will follow along with me on my journey through my vlogging. It's going to be a wild ride, but I hope you guys had a great reading month in May, and I wish you all the best in June, and I will catch you guys later.